Happy Friday, everybody. My name is Michael Nault. I am the Executive Director of Digital Experience at the Art Institute of Chicago. As we speak, the Chicago Cubs celebration parade is walking by the Art Museum. So I'm sad to be missing it, but I'm also hoping that the museum is still standing when I get back to Chicago. I think that's the only baseball pride statement I've ever made, but the topic of today is experience design. I'm joined here with Troy LaChance, who is one of the lead designers at Bluecadet. Your official title is?
Executive Creative Director.
Great. So we partnered together on an exhibition about Van Gogh and Van Gogh's bedrooms. And I think what you'll see here today is a very different approach for a fine art exhibition. You typically see this approach with natural history and science museums, but we took a very different approach with this particular show. We'll tell you a little bit about how this exhibition came about. We'll talk a little bit about the process, and then we'll get into the execution. So this is a show that performed wildly well for the Art Institute. We had about 4,000 visitors a day. And over the 12-week show, we had almost 500,000 visitors, which is roughly the entire population of Minneapolis. So we were really pleased about that. And there's any number of reasons why it did really well. One is the social media campaign, wherein some folks recreated Van Gogh's bedrooms as part of an Airbnb rental. And that is a thing that is not part of this presentation, but I'm happy to tell you more about. It went viral. Made the news in many different situations, and really helped us out for this show. Bear with me one moment. So other than the social media, I think there's something at the heart of this exhibition that is more biographical and more relatable that really helped people identify with Van Gogh. It doesn't hurt that Van Gogh is one of the most popular artists of all time, but I think all of these things together made people come and then have a really satisfying visit at the end of the day. So we call ourselves the Digital Experience Department. We really focus on experience design. So while our focus is digital, it's not just web, it's not just app, it's the full continuity of the visitor experience. That's one definition of experience design. The other thing that we really focus on is what we do with exhibition design and digital integration. To me, experience design comes down to time, space, and narrative. So essentially, as you're moving through a space, you're getting some sort of story. So we really try to work narrative into this exhibition rather than having an arbitrary assemblage of work. We worked really closely with the exhibit designers, and we worked very closely with the curators. This is a picture from one of our really earliest brainstorms, and the curators brought in what I thought was a really interesting brainstorming device. They had all of their work, they had all of the collections up on these cardboard placards, which allowed us to move the chapters around in the story really, really easily so that we could kind of replicate the galleries. The other thing that we came up with very early was the concept. And with any sort of experience design, you really want to have a narrative hook. And this one was really simple. The whole exhibition was about Van Gogh's search for some sort of solace in a comfortable home. So it was all about him trying to find home. And that is expressed through the exhibition and every design component related to it. So I'll show you a couple process images. From here, we started working with the various chapters of the stories. These are the different pictures that were selected. This transformed into the various chapters. It was at this point that we actually started introducing media ideas because we had a better understanding of the content. So we identified a few key points here with these red circles where we thought digital media would be a good idea within the story. We also started mapping it out on an experience diagram. This is something that, in addition to the actual floor plans, we try to do for every exhibition. So it's kind of like an emotional mapping of the exhibit itself. That's my very rough sketches transforming into more of a polished floor plan and experience diagram. So here you can see the chapters actually laid out on a floor plan. And when you start thinking about the emotions, I wanted to point out two different things. So we're setting people up in the very beginning. We're providing some sort of overture, and then it gets more and more detailed as you go along. But there's kind of two key points where we really wanted to drive home an idea. And the first was what we call this poetic mode. It's right before people saw the paintings. We wanted people to have an emotional relationship to what Van Gogh was doing at that time. And then right after that is this explainer mode, and this is more about the conservation and the science that went into the exhibition. But you don't want to do that before they see the paintings because it really it kind of breaks the spell, so to speak. So in terms of the design, we were really inspired by two raw assets or two pieces of content. One is Van Gogh's letters, of which he wrote over 700. And then the other was the blueprints for Van Gogh's bedroom still exist. So we thought that that was a really key idea to express in the exhibition itself because home was such an important thing to him. This was a way of bringing it to life that the simple blueprints do not. The letters are amazing if you have time to read them. It's a really lovely, in-depth read. But if you're like one of these many visitors that came to the exhibition, you probably don't understand the native language that he's writing in, and you probably have a tough time reading the small cursive that he was also writing in. So we were very inspired by this, and we wanted to take these main ideas and write them into the exhibition itself. And Troy will talk a little bit more about how this was all executed.
So in many ways, the letters and the blueprint designed the first media piece, which was inside the bedroom, designed it for us. As Michael showed in the diagram, this moment was really the emotional, poetic moment. So we started a design process that focused on features and elements that could draw out that emotion. We did some early visual inspiration mood boards where we looked at process for amplifying his letters, his quotes, how we might reveal some of the sketches that he included in his letters. See in the top right. Then we dove into his letters and spent a lot of time with the curators, kind of understanding some of those key moments. And this moment was the crescendo, kind of, as the curator described, of the exhibition. So we really focused on language that kind of highlighted some of that emotion. In parallel, we looked at a lot of different form factors. This is one of probably 24 renderings that we created to interpret the space. And the architect ultimately designed it, and I'll show you how we kind of interacted with that later. We also, at the time, created storyboards, and this was a critical step in the process in kind of helping, help us understand how motion and animation could bring these letters to life, but it also gave the curators an invaluable tool for obviously inputting on what kind of content should go in here, but also letting them participate in the process of using motion to tell the story, and they had a lot of great feedback. So this is a quick rendering that we did in Cinema 4D, kind of in response to some of the drawings the architect created to show how the first chapter of the projection was working in some initial drawings. It was on two walls. They opted to change this to an angled wall after seeing this. This was another chapter that we really wanted to play off of the chapter that was playing in Van Gogh's room. So they saw this and opted to move it to the adjacent wall so that we could have some interplay between this chapter and the room. This is a quick animatic that we created to show how some of that interplay might happen. So there was this nice interplay where one wall was active, and then the movement activated Van Gogh's room. And this really worked nicely with the letters, because Van Gogh didn't write about just his room or Gauguin's room. He wrote about them simultaneously and was excited about both of them. And as he was talking about one, he was talking about how the other one, he would want to fill the other one with paintings. And this was a great way to show kind of how he was thinking about these spaces. So this is just some of the images of the finished space. So the next media piece that we worked on was kind of a challenge, and this was capturing some stories that were deep and scientific, and if told the wrong way, it could have been some of the most boring content in the exhibition. So Michael had the idea early on to use motion graphics to kind of pull apart some of these scientific ideas and tell that story in an engaging way. This is some storyboards that we created to show how 3D in motion could actually pull apart some of these processes and communicate them in an engaging way for visitors.
Yeah, go next and then... It's okay.
Anyway, there was a quick video there that just shows some of those motion graphics. The next piece we worked on was the conservation lab projection and a kiosk. This was in many ways the most important piece in the show. So what were the differences between these three paintings? How did these paintings kind of help us understand Van Gogh's process? And ultimately, why did the curators decide for the first time to bring these three paintings together? This media piece kind of had to carry that storyline. So early on, we got a lot of great content from the curators, which included X-rays of the paintings, raking light details, different details of the differences between the three paintings. And then, of course, we, as designers, we tried to complicate the process, and we looked at some early approaches where a single user kiosk might drive a large scale projection. Scale was really important. This was going to be a well-attended exhibition. We knew a lot of people were moving through here, and a lot of people needed to see this interpretation. We thought it could be interesting if it was driven by a kiosk, but ultimately we're glad that we didn't, because a single user driven experience wouldn't have worked. These are some early storyboards that we did where initially the conservators wanted to simply show a synchronized kind of fly-through of these three paintings together. Early on, we were concerned that visitors wouldn't understand kind of what they were seeing or some of those differences in the painting, so we tried to impose some overlays, some light interpretive content. Ultimately, it wasn't working, so we decided to roll back to what the conservators originally wanted to do, which was a simple fly-through. This is just some renderings to show the scale and how it would work in the space. And this was a late drawing that the conservators gave us of the exact fly-through in moments in the painting that they wanted to focus on. And ultimately, it worked effectively, and you'll see that in the final video. So because that became such a light moment where we were just showing these beautiful fly-throughs of the three paintings, the kiosk really had to carry some of the didactic, deep kind of dive into the content. So we created this nice interactive where it's basically a synchronized exploration of the three paintings. And this is just a quick video clip of it. So as visitors pan around, they get these little prompts that kind of serendipitously pop up and let them know that there's some interesting interpretive content here. And as you explore it, you can see the X-ray overlays, you can see the raking light images, or navigate back to it. This is the final space.
Okay, so our time's up, and I wanted to transition over to the next panel. Thank you guys all for listening. Maybe if you have just one question, if maybe the next panel wants to come up and we can start transitioning, then we can just answer any final questions before the next session.
I saw the show interactive with Main Race. One thing that we're wrestling with at Minneapolis Institute of Art is this idea of the very difficult poetic section.
Mm-hmm.
When you create content like that, it's interpretation, but it's also an artwork, and it's its own interpretation, potentially influencing visitors.
Right.
Which I'm comfortable with, but how do you discuss that internally? What are curators?
Sure. Right. I find it funny that people are worried that we're influencing visitors, because yes, of course we're influencing visitors. But it is a question that comes up quite a bit, and we have this idea of alcoves. So we create these interpretive alcoves. If you want to go in and you want to learn more, you can go in, but there's always a path where you can cut straight to the more pure experience. Yes, at the back.
This is a question about interpretation.
I'm just this back.
Sure.
To read the letters to his brother Theo, we're tormented. He's a tormented man. He talked about Thomas at the beginning, and then played some nice piano music. And if you look at the art itself, it seems to me, and I don't think it's original thought, that the yellows and the reds look like you might burn yourself with acid, or it might be hot to touch. The portraits on the wall, his self-portraits are this merciless self-examination. My question is, haven't you gotten Van Gogh wrong here? Because this wasn't about a place of solace, it was a place of fearful refuse and awful self-examination.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really interesting question that's probably for one of my partners and who did the curatorial work. From our experience and what we saw in the letters, he expressed this particular bedroom as a place of tranquility and a place where he would go to rest. But I think it's a really interesting point, and we should just talk about it afterwards. So thank you guys all for listening. We had a video to share, but you can always see that online. And thanks for coming. I'm going to transition over to folks who are going to tell you how to make an awesome presentation.